insane, crazy, madman are just some of the comments I've received for buying such a badly wrecked V4S. So I guess I better prove them wrong. We are jamming so much into this episode that by the end of it, you will be surprised. So let's start with the elephant in the room, which is this tank. And this was the one thing I was like super concerned about when I bought this bike, because if you have a look, you can see where this lip around here isn't quite as low as this side here. So my biggest concern is that, for one, I didn't want to have to spend $4,000 on a new tank, because this is an alloy tank and it's actually not that bad. I didn't want to try and fix the tank because it'll never look as good as an OEM tank. So instead, we have one of these, which is RPM carbon cover. Now, you would have seen we did one of these on our last V4 as well, but my concern is that it's probably not going to fit on this section here. So either way, the red doesn't go with the bike. So the red doesn't actually go with the new color scheme. So we're going to have to change something. But let's try and test fit this anyway and see how much change we actually need to alter and how much work we need to do on this. Oh, on this tank. Oh, is that actually fitting? That screw hole's lining up. Oh, it's a little bit high just there. Yeah, you can see like that lip there, that should be flush. I just love these carbon covers from RPM. That is really, really cool. So I'm gonna have to fix that gap. I can't have that gap on a oneL moto bike. So what are we gonna do? Let's take the cover back off and let's see if we can get our soft hammer and give that a bit of a bash into a better position. Okay, so some of you might think my method is crazy, but this gap here has actually decreased. So the gap now is only about 2 mil. So much, much better. It just needed a little bit through here just to be pushed down slightly. I think when it actually hit, it's hit this corner and then pushed it up. Even though all the bolt holes still align, so everything aligns correctly, it's just must have come up like 2 or 3 mil, and that was enough to get that big gap through there. So that's good enough now. I'm pretty happy with that. By the time we tape underneath this tank and then paint it, you won't really notice. So on to the next piece. Okay, so because you can still see the underside of this tank, even when it's on the bike, I'm actually gonna make sure the whole thing is painted, because the last thing I wanna do is have all these little edges around the edge of the carbon showing up red, and then this showing up red when the rest of the bike is not red. You don't know what color it's gonna be yet, but so yeah, this one needs to be cleaned. I've got to make sure all this gunk comes off. So I've got a mixture of cleaner here, and then I just follow it up with H2O with some water. Just make sure it's nice and clean before we put our base coat down. Whilst we do the tank, we're also going to do the wings. So now these are just eBay wings. They're not carbon wings, even though they look like it. They're just the cheaper version. And the reason why I've gone with the slightly cheaper one is because the first thing that breaks when you crash is a set of wings. And you no point putting $1,000 wings on a race bike, because let's face it, they're gonna end up trashed at some point. So they are gonna get painted, but before that, we're going to prime them. So let's give these a coat of primer, and then we've also got the tank fully set up. So that's all masked off and ready to paint as well. Okay, so sweet. That's the primer done, the surface primer. So now I'm just going to wait until that dries, and then we'll give it a wet sand with 800, and then I will actually give it a couple of coats of paint, and you will see what color this bike is going to become. Okay, so whilst we're literally waiting for paint to dry, I'm going to put the swing arm cover on. I've already given the swing arm a good clean. Now, it's got these grazes in it. I can't do much about that, but I can hide them. So this is going to look pretty sick when it actually goes on. So I think it goes just like that. Now, how much better does that look compared to that? Put the double-sided tape inside here. Make sure you leave enough room for it to drain any water away, and then stick it in place. And that's it. It's as easy as that. You don't even have to screw it in place. It's just gonna hold. So I make sure I use more tape than little, so as much as you can. And then just down the bottom here, this is where I've left the gaps so that if water does egress in the top here, it can actually come out of the bottom and not get trapped, cause mold, or ruin your double-sided tape. So how much better does that look? Okay, now ever since I got this bike, it's been so hard to move this bike around the workshop. But luckily, today is gonna change all that. So our clip-ons have finally arrived, and I've actually gone with OEM. Now, there's a reason why I love OEM, and that's because of this. So this notch right here means that you don't have to go out and buy one of those extra bar positioning tools, because this notch, once you put the bar in, indicates the exact angle of where the bar should be in relation to the forks. So it saves me money. It also means that if I stick with these, I can put a mark on them of exactly where they should be. And if I ever change the top triple and I lose that little cutout just there, I always know with a paint pen exactly where on the fork it should line up. Okay, there we are. See that? So that's the locator pin. So we're gonna reuse that. New one goes in, and see the little hole just there? That's for the locator pin to go in once we've got it in there. So that's one bar on. We'll do the same on the other side, but this is a bit like a Tetris game, because now that we've got one bar on, we've got one job done, it opens us up to about another 10 or 20 jobs. And luckily, I've got a magic box over here, which has all of my V4 parts in it. So for instance, we have things like our monkey bar lever guards, they can go on. We've got a throttle, that can go on. We've got grips. Yeah, there's heaps. So we're gonna get it all done in this episode. Okay, it looks like I've got a slight twist in my top triple. So I'm wondering if I just let the tension off the top triple bolts, these two, and here, as to whether or not I'll be able to straighten it by itself, because it looks, from eye, it looks straight until you actually stand on top. And you can see it's slightly like this. So I'm gonna have a play with loosening and tightening these and see if adjusting that top triple fixes what I need. It seems to sort of fix itself now that I've straightened the bike up. So I could have just been working with the bike on an angle like that. That would make sense. Okay, so we'll get Joe from Ride Dynamics once we do the suspension setup to double check everything and just make sure I am correct. So now I'm looking straighter now that the bike's up and down. So we'll double check it anyway. So we might move on to the next piece, which is deletes. Deleting as much as we can. So we'll get another package from Smart Moto, and these guys are fantastic. All the deletes you can want for your bike, all in one little nifty little bag here. So first up, we're gonna delete the side stand, and then we're gonna take the evap canister off. And then I can also sell both those things on eBay for probably, I'm gonna say the side stand, because it's completely OEM, it's hard to find one that's not completely trashed. I'm gonna say 160 bucks, $160, and the evap maybe about $60 or $70. So yeah, there's another $397. Okay, so take the little three-pronged one and the little resistor in the end. That's what confuses the computer. And then plug her in. Okay, so next up it's the evap, and there's just two bolts holding it on, one just above the evap and one to the right. So just get yourself a nice long arm and get in there, and you'll be able to crack them off. That actually holds the housing, the plastic housing for the evap, and then you've still got to pull the hoses off the top. Make sure you don't plug the hose, and then once you've got this off, you can put the actual sensor plug in, which is just up here. A little bit hard to get to, these ones. Now you'll see this little section just here, this is the plug, and this is what we're going to plug off. So our plug goes on the end of here, goes that way. That's one plug done. Now we can remove all of this. If you want, you can trace these all the way back up, but we're not going to. Okay, and one evap canister off as well. That's about another 400 grams. So now that both those deletes are done, I'm just gonna zip tie everything up. There's a couple of little gray zip tie points here on the Ducatis, so I recommend you use them. And that will just clean up all my wiring. It also means I can do a bit more cleaning as well, because I can now get to all this frame through here, up and through behind the evap, and just give the bike a general clean. Okay, next up I've got some wet sandpaper, 2000 grit, and some spray water. I'm just going to give these a bit of a spray down and give them a really quick light wet sand. So just remember that this is a race bike, it's not a show bike, so it's going to have a cover over 99% of this tank anyway. I'm not worried about the paint on top of the tank, no one's going to see that. It's going to have a carbon cover. We're also going to put some white cloth tape all around this tank just to protect it from any more wear, and it also helps to hold the carbon cover on a little bit tighter. So I'll wait for this to dry, then I'll go over it with some 2K gloss clear, and just I'll let that dry probably overnight, and then we'll whack it back on the bike. But yeah, it actually looks pretty good. And there you go. The secret's out of the bag, pearl white. So that's the color we're painting the bike. And for any eagle-eyed viewers out there, you would have also seen that this has arrived, which is our Pro-Fiber race fairing. So with any luck, we'll be able to start mocking that up pretty soon as well. So we're not going to fully put the tank back on, we're just going to mock it up because I do have another part coming hopefully in the next week or so, which is this entire rear subframe. So we've got a rear race subframe coming for it. I don't want to put it all back on and then have to take it all back off, but I do want to mock it up. Okay, so we're back onto the wings and I've got this. Now this is not pearl white, this is flat white. So you're probably wondering why I'm using a can and not my spray gun. Well, the reason is I'm only painting a tiny little bit, and this is the only piece on the bike that's going to be this color. But it's actually not going to be this color. So once I paint these flat white, can you guess what the design of the bike is going to be, knowing that that flat white is not the final color? Too cryptic, maybe? Let's paint them. Okay, so these are all dry, they're all painted. We're gonna come back to these because next episode we're gonna start revealing colors of the bike. But now, we head over to the parts table again, and we've got a few bits and pieces. We've got some carbon. So we're gonna redo this cutout mount here out of carbon this time, just to fit the Racebox Mini. And the next part to go on is actually the throttle. So I organized this to get in from Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine, supplier of a massive amount of Ducati parts. We're not going to use this. Where is it? The spare one. But we are going to put the throttle on and the new grips. So let's get that done. Okay, so we've also got these beautiful bar ends from Monkey Bones, an Australian company. And these are very cool. These are the drop bar ends, so they actually drop down. Like very cool stuff. So we're gonna chuck them on, one on each side. We've also got a sprint filter, and this is just going to give us a bit more performance on the dyno. It's going to let more good air into the engine. So super easy to get off. All you got to do is there's 4 bolts holding the current air filter in place. Just take those bolts out and push this section forward. Now that'll actually expose the existing really crappy OEM air filter, and you can just quite literally pull it out if you can get your fat fingers in there. That's pretty cheap. Okay, so while we're on the theme of carbon, and carbon, these are dual compound racing carbon brake discs. So they're not Brembo Z04s, they're not that good, but they're definitely a level up from just your race sintered pads. So they do require a bit of heating up though. So when you got to come out of the pits, you got to pump your brakes a few times just to get a bit of heat in them. Otherwise you're going to be going full hard on into corner 1 and you're going to have almost no brakes. So let's get these installed. Obviously, I'm not going to actually lock wire these in yet, these caliper bolts, because we've got to take the whole front end off again in only a few days when we actually do the suspension overhaul. So when we overhaul the front shocks, this all has to come apart. So I'm just keeping it sort of hand tight for now so it's safe on the trailer to get the bike to Ride Dynamics, the suspension gurus. Okay, so next up, I really want to get a sense of completion, so I want to put something decent on the bike. So I'm going to put the front fairing on, but as part of that, I've also got to connect, I think, no I don't, I should be fine. Let's just put that on. Okay, so I've just made these little buffer pads just to go on top, just to actually soften the clamp on the fiberglass. And now, let's see if we can get it to fit on this. So I did say it was going to be a massive episode and the bike was going to look totally different by the end of it. And I think I've done that. I've definitely proved myself that this was not a bad decision. This is a good decision, buying this bike. I've still got a bit of fiberglassing to do on the rear tail, just to fix that up a little bit. And then you'll notice behind me, I've also got the full fairing from ProFiber. So if you want a really good fairing, hit up ProFiber. They're really great. Very quick to get it delivered to you as well. Very good service. And then the next part is I'm just waiting on the front shroud. So the radiator duct shroud to come in. Once that comes in, we can actually mount the entire fairing and then get to work on styling the bike. So we're not that far away from completing this beast. And this has got to be the fastest, sexiest, or one of the sexiest V4 builds you would have seen, if you can look past a few of the little scratches. Stay safe. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, you know the drill.